Good wishes to all of you. Essential Sociology for UPSC Civil Services exam. This is my optional for UPSC. I have taken coaching from Byju's online platform. Part 1 contains with 10 chapters. Chapter 1 Sociology the Discipline audiobook. Chapter takeaways. Learn the meaning and scope of the term sociology. Know about the evolution of sociology as a discipline. Study the paradigm of evolution of sociological thoughts. Understand relation of sociology with other disciplines. Sociology as a word has both Latin and Greek origins. The word comes from a Latin word socios, meaning companion, and the Greek origin suffix logi, meaning the study of. Sociology, in its simplest meaning, is the study of society and the social institutions. Sociology evolved as a nascent discipline with a profound influence of natural sciences. In fact, the Darwinian hypothesis of natural evolution had a telling effect on the early sociological postulates. Some British sociologists even viewed human society in a similar evolutionary fashion as that of organic evolution of the living beings. This also influenced many linear evolutionary theories and perspectives later on. Influence of scientific thought, rationalism, and objectivity was so profound on early sociologists that they even tried to maintain distance from other social sciences by contending that sociology alone is a true science of society. Countercurrents against this wave of scientific approach also started to flow within the nascent discipline, and all these claims were soon to be tested on the anvil of legitimacy. Sociology as a discipline is a study of society, its constant social institutions, their interrelationship, and the social actors. In other words, it is about you and me in our social surroundings. Sociologists are the people and professionals who study the patterns of in social interactions among individuals and institutions. When you and I do such studies as part of our routine lives, we also assume the role of sociologists. This is the reason that sociology is sometimes termed as a commonsensical discipline. Though one may debate over such an assertion, and this debate is covered in the later parts of this book. Common sensical or not, there is little disagreement over the fact that sociology as a discipline is easy to grasp as it deals with what we actually do and see on a daily basis. As a formal institutionalizer discipline, it provides us a vantage point from where we can see ourselves and our surroundings in an analytically superior way. The view one gets depends upon the vantage point that one has chosen, and that is the beauty of the discipline also, as it accommodates diverse viewpoints which are different but yet correct in their own standing. This is the reason for which we find numerous explanations of the same phenomenon in sociology, and hence often a debate over even the once arrived consensus as well. The discipline provides space for all so long as there is some reasonable rationale behind their argument. This is the sociological thought, and it has always been part of human existence right from the day when human beings developed a thinking brain. It is only the formal discipline which emerged later on at a time in history which is termed by the social scientists as modernity. Modernity and social change in Europe and emergence of sociology. The Dark Ages. The term is used to denote that period of European history which is between the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century and before the arrival of the Renaissance in the 15th century. In popular terms, it is also considered the same as the medieval period in Europe. It was a period that is considered to have witnessed a decline in literary activities, including decline of the history writing tradition, general demographic decline, limited architectural activity, and lukewarm material and cultural achievements. Despite its negative connotations, the period did witness definite progress in various realms of social life in many parts of the world. And for this reason, the term has significantly fallen into disfavor with many sociologists also. What was the first sociological thought in human history? The question is difficult to answer as the curious human mind always had a desire to know more about its social surroundings since time immemorial. Thus, sociological reasoning predates the foundation of the discipline itself. Long before the formal establishment of the discipline in Europe, sociological deliberations were made by individuals in their various works, both routine and literary. Various historical treatises like a Republic of Plato, De Officios of Cicero, and Arthashastra of Kautilya contain excerpts which are clear expositions of the earliest recorded sociological line of thought in a systematic manner. But it was only in the 19th century when such thoughts were institutionalized in the form of a discipline. But even this was not a sudden development, and it was preceded by a series of events which precipitated the emergence of the new discipline. Roots of such developments can be traced to the late medieval period of Europe. Before the Enlightenment period, old Europe was traditional and inward looking. Roots of such developments can be traced to the late medieval period of Europe. Before the Enlightenment period, old Europe was traditional and inward looking. This period of stagnation and backwardness was referred to as the Dark Ages in Europe due to prevalence of multiple social evils, ignorance, and feudal structures. This period also considerably lacked new ideas and innovations in social and scientific fields. It was followed by a distinctly new era of ideas and material developments which gained popularity as the Renaissance, which literally means the rebirth or the reawakening. This reawakening was about the golden old traditions, thoughts, and culture. We will discuss these new terms in reasonable details in upcoming sections. The Renaissance was a cultural movement which began in Italy in the 14th century and is considered as the bridge between the Dark Ages or medieval history and modern times. It put man and humanism at the center of all activities, and it harked back to the so called golden period of European history. Its most profound impact was in the realm of fine arts and literature, but it also stimulated thoughts about human existence. It was during this period that some profound questions were raised about a human existence in the then contemporary European society. These questions provided a fertile ground for the later sociological thoughts as well. Evolution of modern sociological thought. France, Montesquieu 1686 to 1755, Orosea 1712 to 78, Saint Simon 1760 to 1825, Comte 1798 to 1857, Tocqueville 1805 to 59, Durkheim 1858 to 1917, Althusser 1918 to 90, Baudrillard 1929 to 2007. Journey. Kant 1724 to 1804, Hegel 1720 to 1831, Feuerbach 1804 to 72, Marx 1818 to 83, Weber 1864 to 1920, and Dilthey 1833 to 1911, Horkheimer 1895 to 1973, and Scotch 1899 to 1959, Habermas 1929, Frankfurt School 1923, Italy Pareto 1848 to 1923, Moscow 1858 to 1941, Britain Adam Smith 1723 to 1790, Ricardo 1772 to 1823, Spencer 1820 to 1903, Giddens 1938, USC Mead 1863 to 1931, Chicago School 1920s to 40s, Mills 1916 to 62, Sorokin 1889 to 1968, Parsons 1902 to 79, Merton 1910 to 2003, Dahrendorf 1929 to 2009, Garfinkel 1929 to 2011, Berger 1929 to 2007, Wallerstein 1930 to 2019. India Guray 1893 to 1983, D.P. Mukherjee 1894 to 1961, Dumont 1911 to 98, A.R. Desai 1915 to 94, Peteli 1934, Srinivas 1916 to 99. The Renaissance is said to have given birth to another important ideological paradigm in human history, the ideology of modernism, and hence led to the dawn of modernity in Europe. The term modernity is derived from the Latin word modernus, which itself is derived from modo, meaning just now or current. By this definition, modernity is a relative term which denotes the new practices as compared to the old. But in sociological and historical sense, it denotes a specific period in the history of Europe during which Europe saw significant cultural and intellectual upheaval, which ultimately laid the foundation of the contemporary modern world. According to Marshall Berman, in his All That Is Solid Melts into Air, the Experience of Modernity 2010 asserted that modernity was not only about some new liberal ideas and practices, but was also about the existential experience of the conditions that they produce even today and their ongoing impact on human culture, institutions, and politics. Regardless of such a broad contemporary visualization of the concept of modernity, even in those times in their contextual understanding of the concept, some scholars were so deeply influenced by this new ideology that they saw it as a panacea to the then existing social deformities. The modernity as a specific period in Europe in general became synonymous with a period which was marked by questioning of tradition, the prioritization of individualism over the collectivity, freedom of ideas, equality in all spheres of life, promotion of scientific and technological progress, rationalization of institutions and ideas, and finally, as a departure from feudalism or agrarianism toward capitalism and the market economy, industrialization, urbanization, and secularization. In the political sphere, it also saw the development of modern concepts like that of the contemporary nation state and its constitution, institutions like representative democracy, modern bureaucracy, and as per contemporary scholars like Michael Foucault, even birth of new forms of surveillance. In this period, the old orthodox beliefs were liberally questioned and rationality emerged as a sort of new religion. Contemporary socio political thinkers like Rosac and Montesquieu talked of new political ideas, while economic thinkers like Adam Smith, Ricardo, and J.S. Mill talked of a new economic order. All these had a common thread, which was rationality of human thoughts. This new order started to replace the old order, and it created considerable social upheaval and disturbance in society. In this background, emerged the earliest systemized sociological thoughts and minds of the likes of Hegel, Comte, and Spencer, which could be held responsible for emergence of a new formal discipline of sociology. These developments were mainly Western but had global consequences. The events that took place during this period of churning were both discrete and continuous. The Industrial Revolution was a continuous event as new forms of industry started to replace home based production, and as a result, new forms of economic relations emerged. Industrial working also significantly altered other social institutions like family, kinship, and household. Another event was a discrete event in the form of the French Revolution. This was a never before event in the history of the political arena, and it disrupted the old feudal order. At the same time, it also attracted sharp counter reactions from the conservative forces. As a result, French society was shaken to its core, and social scientists had a new task at hand to explain the upheavals in the society. It was at this juncture that a need was felt to devise new means to understand the society, as the existing tools to understand social changes failed to explain such a drastic socio political upheaval in French society. This was yet another spark which gave birth to the discipline of sociology. Industrial Revolution. It was a phase during modern Europe history when the European society underwent a process of change from an agrarian and handicraft based economy to one dominated by industry and machine manufacturing. There was a tremendous change in the way goods were produced, and as a result, a great amount of economic surplus was generated, and which is said to have led to the need of exploring new markets and ultimately leading to colonialism. It created new social structures, and Europe quickly moved away from being a rural society to urban society, which had new forms of social and economic challenges. But the story of the birth of the discipline of sociology is not so simple as it appears from the above paragraphs, and to understand the overall circumstances in which it was born, many developments have to be juxtaposed together with a host of other factors which together created an environment conducive for its birth. This new and distinct way of studying society can be understood better if we look back historically at the bigger picture, which is linked with the dawn of modernity and includes intellectual ideas, material context, and the political development within which sociology was born and later flourished. The developments can be broadly clubbed into following categories. Intellectual ideas. One of the foremost fertile grounds for fermentation of the intellectual ideas, which were responsible for the birth of sociological thought, was the Enlightenment. It was a European intellectual movement in the late 17th and 18th centuries and was led by scholars like Montesquieu and Roscoe, who emphasized upon reason and individualism. It had a great influence on the emergence of sociology, though an indirect one, as Enlightenment and Counter Enlightenment thoughts interplayed with each other, as Irving Jetlin puts it in his ideology and the development of sociological theory, 1996, that early sociology developed as a reaction to enlightenment. While the enlightenment thesis puts individual at center stage of social interactions, on the other hand, the counter enlightenment proponents considered society as the most important units of analysis. Apart from this dialectic, other Enlightenment ideas of rationalism, empirism, and change orientation also affected early sociological thought. In fact, the earliest form of sociological investigation, that is positivity sociology, which is discussed later, had much to do with the Enlightenment ideas of rationality and scientific investigation. Darwin's idea about organic evolution was another dominant influence on early sociological thought, and many of the early social thinkers started to believe that society too evolves in a similar fashion as the organisms do. They were also convinced that progress in knowledge of society on lines of natural sciences promised the solution to all social ills. For example, Auguste Comte, the French scholar considered to be one of the founders of sociology, discipline in modern sense, believed that sociology would contribute to the welfare of humanity, and for that it has to be approached as a scientific discipline. These ideas reached a very mature state in France, which ultimately became the birthplace of sociology. Alexis de Tocqueville, Claude Saint Simon, Auguste Comte, a disciple of Saint Simon, and Emile Durkheim became the face of French sociology with their seminal formative works. Comte was the first to use the term sociology, and we believed that study of sociology would be scientific. He developed his scientific view of the discipline in the form of positivism or positive philosophy. He developed his ideas in the form of a new stream of investigation called social physics initially, and in 1839 he called it sociology. Material and social developments, material developments which influenced the rise of new discipline of sociology are understood in the form of arrival of the industrial revolution and growth of capitalism. The industrial revolution gave birth to the factory system of production, led to emergence of the middle class and dismantling of feudal estates. Today, these developments sound largely positive, but these developments had certain negative faults also. In the economic sphere, though there were cities earlier as well, the industrial cities gave birth to a completely new kind of urban world. Factory system replaced the home-based production. The period was marked by the soot and grime of factories, by overcrowded slums of the new industrial working class, degradation of labor, bad sanitation, general squalor, and new forms of poverty. Workers were forced to work in dehumanizing conditions under the new factory system. New forms of crime, including petty thefts, also emerged. Urbanization in Europe at that time had many of the evils associated with it that we witness in India at this moment. Though urbanization was indispensable, it had an unpleasant side which attracted the attention of social scientists. In the social sphere, also, new developments happened. As a result of industrial migration and resulting social change, new institutions like nuclear family emerged. Nuclear family provided more flexibility to individual family members, but it also led to issues of increased incidence of domestic violence, marital breakups, etc. Emergence of middle class as a new structural class was a new social development, and it led to new cleavages in European society. Dark Ages, dawn of modernity and its faults, social changes, rise of industrial society, middle class, secularism, urbanization, economic changes, industrial revolution, market forces, capitalism, political changes, French Revolution, democracy, liberty. Social changes, new phase of poverty, nuclear family, economic challenges, new crimes, poor living conditions, political challenges, chores and uncertainty, quest of quest for answers, intellectual context, emergence of sociology, scientific context. Emergence of sociology as a discipline was not guided by a single event or factor, but was rather a result of complex material and non material turnings in Europe, especially in France. Political developments. The biggest event that affected the emergence of the discipline of sociology was the French Revolution, which itself was influenced by the Enlightenment philosophy. Although a general political context was present throughout Europe, an immediate context for the rise of sociology was present in France with its unique socio political situation. The upheaval that the French Revolution created served as the immediate context for emergence of the discipline. Prior to the revolution, France was trapped in an archaic socio-economic condition and feudalism was a hallmark of this society. Society was divided into estates, a peculiar form of social stratification in the then France and many other parts of Europe. Under the estate system, the society was broadly divided into three classes of people: the nobility, the clergy, and the commoner. It was a highly distorted system in which the first two estates ruled the roots at the expense of the commoner. The estate system bred a lot of discontent and tension in the society, and ultimately the French Revolution provided the environment which led to replacement of the old feudal system with a new one. Ideals of democracy, liberty, and fraternity given by the intellectuals like Montesquieu and Rosset during the French Revolution became the new watchwords. But these changes in French society didn't come easily, and the old system resisted stiffly. As a result of these churnings, a tussle between the old and the new ensured that created a condition of great uncertainty. The revolution was so disruptive that it affected all the spheres of life, and a general sense of anarchy and insecurity became rampant. In this situation, the early social thinkers sought to find the answers to the questions posed by the French Revolution. Intellectuals like Saint Simon, Auguste Comte, and Durkheim provided the early ideas in this political context, which laid the formal foundation of the discipline. The early thinkers made a bid to understand the cause of these new events and their consequence for society. As discussed earlier, it was Comte who called the new set of thoughts as sociology for the first time. The English social thinker Spencer followed the footsteps of Comte and gave the idea of social evolution. Similar to biological evolution, efforts of Durkheim led to the establishment of sociology as the first department in France and Europe. Thus, despite the general impetus being present in Europe, sociology emerged as a distinct discipline in France in the backdrop of the French Revolution. The French Revolution, with its archaic feudal settings into which it was born, was the single most significant political event which served as the background for the emergence of sociology as a discipline. Intellectual push ideas of Montesquieu, Rousseau, etc., economic anomalies, evils of estate system, archaic politics, feudalism, despotic rule, unit indivisibility, de la republican, liberty, egalite, fraternity, a mort, French Revolution. Thus, modernity in Europe had an impact on social, economic, and political lives of people as well as social institutions. Initially, modernity was seen as positive, but its negative fault also soon became too apparent. Modernity posed challenges which led to the growth of new intellectual ideas, which were precipitated by new material conditions and a new political order. The questions which were posed by these hitherto unknown circumstances were not answered by the hitherto existing disciplines, and a new science of society was sought, and what emerged is known as sociology. Due to its specific context of origin, it was also argued that sociology was the science of the new industrial society, according to John Harris in his The Second Great Transformation. Capitalism at the end of the 20th century 2000, sociology emerged as a discipline which arose in direct response to the social problems posed by modernity. Thus, a safe conclusion at this point of time can be made that sociology in the West emerged as an attempt to make sense of modernity and its faults. The young discipline requires subject matter, perspectives, and methods also. Popularity of natural sciences influenced the new discipline. In these aspects, new methods were explored which were scientific and rational. Instead of metaphysical speculations, the early social thinkers turned to new evidence based on empirical methods of social investigation. Social survey was the first such tool that was used by the early sociologists. Factual base was provided by the pre existing historical records, and in fact, historical studies had a pronounced influence on the writings of many early thinkers. In this context, early perspectives were provided by Comte, Spencer, and Durkheim. Durkheim's contribution among these provided Durkheim's contribution among these proved pioneering, and his evolutionary and functionalist view of sociology became one of the founding thoughts of the nascent discipline. Modernity and its impact on human existence and on the growth of the discipline has been studied from different viewpoints. Critical theorists, a group of neo Marxists belonging to the Frankfurt School, which was developed in Germany in the 1930s, is an attempt to modify Marxism, such as Theodor Adorno and Zygmunt Bauman assert that modernity represents a departure from the core principles of the philosophy of enlightenment towards nefarious processes of alienation, such as commodity fetishism in the current context. Modernity is understood in completely different terms. Shyama Eisenstadt, in his Comparative Civilizations and Multiple Modernities 2003, asserts that the modernity, even in the past, did not have a single definition and has multiple meanings and interpretations. Modernity is thus a plural condition, and it liberates it from being an exclusively Western European cultural concept to a much broader concept. On the basis of this new understanding, sociologists have also tried to explore the impacts of multiple modernities on the evolution of the discipline of sociology, and they no longer limit themselves to one single model of evolution of sociological thought based on the classical notion of modernity. Scope of the subject of sociology. We have discussed how sociology emerged as a discipline. Now we shall take its scope, that is, areas with which the discipline deals with and the questions related to what to study and how to study. Sociology is the simplest words in is a systematic study of society, and it studies human society as an interconnected whole and how society and the individuals, institutions, structures, etc. interact with each other. A sociologist is interested in the general study of social behavior of groups, large or small, and lays special emphasis upon understanding of social life in its everyday form. General study also implies that while other social science disciplines deal with more specific aspects of society. Sociology takes a broad view. Sociology seeks to study society and to analyze it in terms of the social relations that have a pattern. Sociology seeks to explore how and why social groups, social institutions, and social processes emerge, persist, and then change. The scope of sociology study on the ground is extremely wide. It can focus its analysis on interactions between individuals, such as that of a shopkeeper with a customer, between two friends or family members. On a large scale, it may analyze national and international issues as well in a systematic manner. So, what defines the discipline of sociology and its scope is therefore not just what it studies, that is, family, trade unions, villages, or nation states, but also how it studies a chosen field. So, apart from the variety in subject matter of study, scope of sociology is linked to the ways in which such studies are carried out. We should also note that scope of study is more in the direction of analysis of social problems in social systems and not in the nature of normative suggestions, as it happens in case of disciplines like philosophy or solutions for the social problems and issues. Apart from the above meta classification of scope of the discipline, the scope has also been interpreted differently by different scholars. Some, like Mead and Weber, viewed its scope in the form of social action, while others, like Marx, viewed it in the form of understanding of conflict in society and suggesting its solution. Some, like the feminists and the Marxists, have expanded the scope beyond the analytical framework and have also ventured into the normative arena also. But broadly, the early sociologists have had two prime concerns: a scientific analysis of society and to lay the principles of social evolution. According to Durkheim, the scope of sociology is to study social facts in society. Social facts should be studied in a similar way as natural scientists study natural things. According to Radcliffe Brown, who adopted an anthropological functional approach, the subject matter lies in structures or patterns of social interrelations which can be studied by fieldwork. According to Marx, the scope of sociology is to study the dynamics of forces and relations of production. American sociologist Parsons defines scope of sociology as study of action systems. Scope of sociology as a discipline deals with studying various societal components like institutions, actions, individuals, systems, and structures, and this scope is influenced by various paradigms and systems of investigation of sociology discipline. You can relate it with a scope of sociology, social action, Marxist, functionalist, interaction, social system, positivist, interpretivist, interactions, social institutions like postmodern, feminist, interactions again, social structure, Indologist, Orientalist. These interactions again repeated wise like social action. Hence, the scope of sociology was defined differently by different scholars during different times. During the evolutionary phases of the discipline, sociologists try to understand society in terms of macro units like religion, and the influence of natural sciences was apparent. Comte divided the scope of sociology as social statics or stability and social dynamics or change. Does that ring up something like laws of physics to you? Later on, the English socialist Herbert Spencer put an evolutionary perspective in termed society and organism and widened its scope, and he also couldn't get away from obsession with the natural sciences. After the 1880s, sociology was established in various educational departments in Europe. First such department was established by Durkheim in France. This led to wide academic discourse in a systematic manner and its scope was expanded. Durkheim divided scope as social morphology, social physiology, and general sociology. Max Weber soon introduced microwave in sociology. During this period, there were two predominant schools which were namely micro or formalistic school and macro or synthetic school. Formal school considered scope as limited and emphasized more on understanding rather than predicting. It aimed, according to Max Weber, at an interpretative understanding of this society. Macro school, on the other hand, aimed at studying society in totality. A conflict perspective was also added to the scope led by Marxist sociologists, but the apparent failure of the European working class to overthrow capitalism, rise of Nazism and fascism, and corruption within the Soviet and its allies cast great shadows of doubts over the relevance of Marxist theories. It led to the development of neo-Marxists, which includes Frankfurt School or critical school led by Horkheimer and Adorno, who tried to incorporate a cultural perspective into Marxist thoughts and also included cultural studies in the scope of the Marxist sociology. Later, starting from the 1940s, new ideas emerged and micro and macro views were combined. For example, Talcott Parsons combined the study of social action and social system in sociology. Similarly, Merton combined psychological and structural aspects of society, which is best exemplified in his theory of anomy. When the American sociological traditions felt threatened by Marxist ideology, they instead turned to Weber, Simon, and Durkheim. Hence, they saw the scope of sociology more on functional lines. Feminist sociology emerged during 1960s as a radical alternative and offered distinctive gender-based explanations. It emphasized the centrality of gender in social change. According to them, social reality is viewed differently by the two sexes. Postmodern thinkers like Jacques Derrida and Michael Foucault laid the foundation of post-structuralism. Foucault analyzed the emergence of modern institutions like prisons, hospitals, and schools as a sign of increasing surveillance and discipline in society. More recently, postmodernists have further expanded the scope and have tried to make it interdisciplinary as well. New issues like health, aging, demographic issues, cybernetics, and information technology are also coming under the scope of sociology. Sociology has grown more interdisciplinary than ever, widening its scope in a never before manner. According to French author Jean Baudrillard, mass media has reversed the Marxist idea that society is dominated by economic structure. Rather, it will now be increasingly controlled by the signs and images which are a creation of mass media, sociology, and other social sciences. Sociology has a peculiar origin with a desire to have a close affinity to natural sciences, but this claim was always contested. As a result, it is often compared, related, and contrasted to other social sciences, sometimes to gauge its claim of a science and sometimes to find the areas of overlap with other social sciences. Disciplines like history, anthropology, ethics, and political sciences are of special interest as they have impacted sociological discourse significantly over a period of time. Some of these and their relationship with sociology are discussed in this section. Sociology and economics. Economics is the study of production in society, while sociology studied all the aspects of society. Economics, according to Alfred Marshall, investigates how man earns and spends money. And economic activity is also a social activity, and production involves social relations as well. Methods of earning money are also guided by social norms and the values. Theft and robbery can never be legitimate means of earning money. Consumption behavior is also affected by social and cultural values. However, classical economic calculations sometimes exclude various social costs and benefits which economists themselves recognize as externalities. Pierre Bourdieu rightly said that a true economist takes into consideration even the costs of externalities like suicide and pollution. As a result, sociologists have a more nuanced approach of studying the economic institutions which otherwise sound similar. For example, the capitalist mode of production of different countries is viewed differently. Indian capitalism is considered as compulsive capitalism, while Japanese capitalism is considered as nationalist capitalism, and the recently emerged Chinese capitalism as socialist capitalism. In classical sociology, one extreme position has been adopted by the markets. According to them, the understanding of the superstructure or social superstructure consisting of various social institutions can never be complete unless seen in the context of economic infrastructure. Thus, the economic behavior of man is viewed as a key to understanding the social behavior of man. Durkheim rejected the classical economic theory of division of labor and offered a sociological explanation. He tried to give social explanations a priority over economic explanations, and according to him, at a macro level, economic activities happen in an autonomous manner guided by the needs of the society. In recent times, there are many studies like those by Strache, Galbraith, Gunnar, Mydral, and Raymond Aron, which are used in both the disciplines. A branch of sociology called economic sociology deals with the social aspects of economic life. Other emerging concepts like gender budgeting and feminist economics are also coming up to address the emerging social relations. Thus, sociology and economics meet in a number of areas. There are two factors that contributed towards this convergence. Economists are no longer interested in market mechanism alone, but are now interested in economic growth, national product and national income, and development also in underdeveloped and developed regions both. In all these areas, the economist has to either necessarily collaborate with a socialist, or he or she has to become a socialist himself or herself. Economists increasingly use sociological research to formulate new theories and policies. Socialists, on the other hand, study the impact of such theories. Sociology Sociology shares some similarities and some differences with other disciplines, but at times also acts as a common umbrella connecting thread also. Like sociology had the subjects like history, psychology, political science, ethics, economics, anthropology. Economics, sociology. Economics. Its scope is narrow and specifically related to production activities. Sociology has a wider scope as it studied all the aspects of human activity. Economics would lay emphasis Economists would lay emphasis on the relationship between pure economic variables like relationship of price and supply, money flows and input output. Sociology would study the production enterprises as a social organization. The supply of labor is affected by values and preferences, influences of education on economic behavior, and role of caste system in economic development. Traditional economists seek to understand economic activity in a broader framework of ownership of and relationship to means of production. Sociology, on the other hand, sociologists have criticized economic theories as being reductionist in nature and according to them the economists conception of man ignores the role of various social factors which influence economic behavior. It is more systematized and is more scientific. Economic theorists try to give laws which can predict the economic phenomenon with a fair accuracy. Sociology, unlike economics, usually does not provide technical solutions, but it encourages a critical analytical perspective. Scope of building Economic scope of building theory and laws is more in economics. For example, law of demand and supply is universal in application. Sociology Sociological laws are less universal in nature as there is little consensus in sociology itself over the precise perspectives which should be used. According to Prior Bourdieu, a true economic science would look at all the costs of the economy, not only at the cost that corporations are concerned with, but also at crimes, suicides, and so on. So, economic calculations can never leave social calculations. Further, sociology learns a lot from economics, which offers precise terminologies, provides robust rational models, and precise analytical tools for human behavior. Economists' predictive abilities often suffer because of their neglect of individual behavior, cultural norms, and institutional resistance, which sociologists study. Sociology and psychology. Psychology is often defined as the science of behavior and sociology as the science of society. Sociology studies the social systems while psychology studies mental systems. Today, there is hardly any doubt that sociology has largely moved away from its early association with the natural sciences, but psychology continues to maintain its closeness with the natural sciences. It still uses methods of hypothesis testing via repeatable experiments, but despite that, unlike sociology, psychology is not so well equipped to deal with the collectivity of humans and largely remains focused on individuals. On the relation between the two disciplines, there are two extreme views. J.S. Mill sought to establish primacy of sociology psychology overall, other social scientists believed that all laws are derived from the laws of mind. Similarly, Sigmund Freud also gave more importance to inheritance over the environment and implied that sociology is merely an extension of social psychology. Durkheim, on the other hand, made a radical distinction between the phenomena studied by sociology and psychology, respectively. His study of suicide even tended to ignore psychological dispositions while taking into account social phenomena. Most sociologists, however, have adopted various intermediate positions. According to Ginsberg, many sociological generalizations can be more firmly established by relating them to general psychological laws. German scholars like Weber came to believe that sociological explanations can be further enriched if an attempt is made to understand social behavior in terms of underlying meanings. According to Girth and Mills, some concepts like a role are the meeting point of the two where social structure and individual character meet. Psychology, sociology. Psychology, it is the study of individual human personality. Sociology, it is the study of individual as well as of society. It is the science of man's experience and behavior, and its subject matter includes basic instincts, sympathy, suggestions, imitations, and passions on psychology. According to sociology, it is the science of study of social institutions and their Interrelationships and its subject matters include family, individual, religions, power, and social change. Its scope is limited and focuses on man's mental activities and his basic behavior. Sociology is a general study of society and has a wider scope. Psychology is more scientific and has greater scope of experimentation, and there are psychological laboratories which are used to test hypotheses. Sociology has multiple perspectives and its claim of scientific discipline is contested while within the discipline itself. Some attempts have been made to bring the two disciplines together. One of the most valuable works is of Girth and Mills. According to them, the study of social psychology is interplay between individual character and social structure as human behavior is not purely driven by instincts. Social psychology serves as a bridge between psychology and sociology. It maintains a primary interest in the individual but also concerns itself with the way in which the individual behaves in social groups collectively with other individuals. Sociology and history. History and sociology have a very close relation. According to G. E. Howard, history is a past sociology, sociology is present history. Philosophy and history are considered as the mother of all social sciences. Karl Marx and Durkheim pioneered the use of historical data in their sociological discourse. discourse. Karl Marx's historical materialism is pivoted around the historical evolution of modes of production. Weber's The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism also used a historical particular idea type, and Bertram Sorkin's social and cultural dynamics makes ample use of historical interferences. History, sociology. Historians almost as a rule study the past. Sociology. Sociologists are generally more interested in the contemporary or recent past and present. Earlier, historians were content to delineate the actual events to establish how things actually happen. Sociology focuses generally to establish causal relationships through detached observations. History studies concentrate details with an objective discussions of real events. Sociology is more likely to categorize it and generalize the particular events from the concrete reality. History is often descriptive. Sociology has normative elements also, as in case of feminist and Marxist perspectives. History generally looks at events from the framework of time. Sociology looks at the events and institutions from the perspective of the nature of relations involved. The interaction between the two disciplines can be found in their subject matter. Subject matter of sociology and history overlap to a considerable extent. The historian frequently provides the material which sociologist uses. With the help of history, sociology can get crucial information about the past. According to Radcliffe Brown, sociology is nomothetic while history is hagiographic. The historian describes unique events while the sociologist derives generalizations. But nowadays, history is not only concerned with which and what of events but also how of events. This emphasis on cause and effect has brought the two disciplines closer. The line of demarcation between history and sociology is becoming increasingly blurred as history is also no longer purely descriptive. Sociology and political science. The two distinct disciplines of social science, sociology and political science, converge frequently as the subject matter is man and his socio political behavior, and the convergence is perhaps on the rise. A beginning was made with the works of Marx. According to him, political institutions and behaviors are closely linked with the economic system and social classes. Provoked by this thinking, by the end of the 19th century, some thinkers pursued the matter in detail with studies of political parties, elite classes' voting behavior, bureaucracy, and political ideologies, as it is manifested in the political sociology of Michaels, Marx, Weber, and Pareto. Another development occurred in America and is known as the behavioral approach to political phenomena. This was initiated by the University of Chicago in the 1930s. Political science, sociology. Political science. Convention, political science restricted itself mainly to the study of state and power. Sociology has a wider scope and is devoted to the study of all aspects of society. Political science subject matter of political science is better codified. Sociology is more open ended in its approach. Political science primarily tends to turn attention towards the processes within the government and its relations with people. Sociology stresses the interrelationships among a wide set of institutions, including government. Political science provides laws with affect the welfare of masses. Sociology provides data and basis for these laws and policies. Social consideration like caste, kinship, and demography play on play an important role in political decisions, especially in electoral politics. The forces at work and the changes that are taking place in peasant, tribal, or caste societies belong more to the sphere of sociology and anthropology rather than to that of political science. Sociological studies have also been conducted in the context of political organizations, voting behavior, caste politics, role of gender in politics, etc., which involves a blend of political science and sociological thinking. Welfare policies of government often rely on sociological studies. Sociologists like M.N. Srinivas coined terms like vote bank politics, which are used widely in political science. Similarly, concepts like that of power elite given by American sociologists like C.W. Mills have a wide acceptability in political science. Political system affect the social institutions also, as we cannot choose who our parents will be. We cannot choose what nationality we will have. Organization of family is also impacted by the political system. China once strictly enforced a two children norm and Indian government also tries to influence families through family planning, population policy and so on. The American state promotes values of openness and freedom in the family. Countries like Pakistan, on the other hand, advocate religious code. Recently, there is renewal of interest in market sociology, sociological ideas among political scientists because of political revolutions like the Arab Spring. Sociology and anthropology. Sociology and anthropology had quite different origins. Early Western sociologists had a ready context closer to home when modernism, French Revolution, and industrialization arrived in Europe. On the other hand, anthropologists had to discover their own context by venturing out to the so called primitive inhabitations. Anthropology also borrowed ideas from prehistoric archaeology. Classical Western notions of these two disciplines view sociology as a study of industrialized society, while anthropology as a study of primitive society. But today, the distinction between industrialized and non industrialized others has blurred, and this definition is not applicable in a plural society like India, where this other is found every next door, according to Srinivas. In the early periods of their growth, the two disciplines grew up in close cooperation with each other in terms of the concepts, used, areas of interest, and their methods of study. This can be seen in the works of early pioneers of the two disciplines, which cannot easily be assigned exclusively to either of the disciplines. For example, works of Malinowski, Malinowski are equally used in both sociology and anthropology. In fact, of all the major disciplines of social sciences, anthropology and sociology have the highest similarities with each other vis-a-vis all other disciplines. The early convergence between the two disciplines was followed by a period of extreme divergence in terms of their universe of study, areas of interest, methods of study, and even the concepts employed. In spite of the obvious differences between the two in the 19th century, as stated above, there has been a good deal of convergence in modern times. Both anthropology and sociology study the same subject matter, that is, man, time, and cultural elements are the only aspects that separate them. Anthropology, sociology. Anthropology has taken birth from curiosity of Western scholars in primitive societies in non-Western countries. Sociology originated from philosophy of history, political thought, and positive sciences in the light of challenges posed by modernity. Anthropologists describe and analyze in clinically neutral terms because they can place themselves as outsiders without being involved in values. The methods employed of sociologists are loaded with values and hence their conclusions are tinged with ethical considerations. Anthropology tends to study society, simple societies in all their aspects as a whole. Social anthropologists tend to closely study small societies which are relatively unchanging and lacking in historical records. Sociologists often study parts of an existing society like family or processes such as social mobility. Anthropologists generally live in the community that they study in order to observe and record what they see. Their analysis is essentially qualitative. Sociologists also rely on statistics and questionnaires, and their analysis is of often formal and quantitative as well at times. Anthropology also studies physical aspects related to evolution and biology. Sociology mainly focuses upon cultural and social aspects. The small units of study which the anthropologists require are fast disappearing. Placed in such a situation, both anthropologists and sociologists are concerned with the process of economic growth and social changes. Both the disciplines are equally useful in studying the African and Asian societies which are changing under the impact of the West. It is no longer the prerogative, prerogative of a sociologist to study advanced societies. The works of Talcott, Parsons, and R.K. Merton are attempts towards an adaptation of the functionalist approach to study industrial societies, and William White adopted participated, participant observation for the study of modern industrial society. Thus, the disciplines are increasingly converging towards each other. Sociology and common sense. Sociology deals with our social lives, and for this reason, it is sometimes accused that this discipline is nothing more than a common sense based body of knowledge, an accusation which is not true. Common sense is defined as routine, routine knowledge that people have of their everyday world and activities. Common sense explanations are generally based on what may be called naturalistic and or individualistic explanations based on taken for granted knowledge. At times, it may be lacked with prejudices and biases also. Sociology has its triced with common sense since long, and it has been accused of being not more than common sense knowledge tried since its birth. In this section, we will discuss and analyze this accusation and relation of sociology with a common sense knowledge. The problem is not that a common sense knowledge is necessarily false, but that it is unexamined, unreflected, and taken for granted. For this prime reason, sociology is distinguished from common sense on various grounds. Common sense generally takes cues from what appears on the surface. Sociology, on the other hand, looks for interconnections and root causes which may not be apparent. A sociologist works like a skeptic, and sociology in a way works as a science of organizer skepticism that is looking beyond what meets the eye. Explanation for religion and suicide by Durkheim are the best examples of such sociological outlook. While religion says God created man, Durkheim said man created God or religion. According to Peterberg, the fascination of sociology lies in the fact that its perspective makes us see in a new light the every world in which we have lived our lives. Sociology uses reason and logic, common sense uses conjectures and stereotypical beliefs. Common sense views are often based upon images that get reinforced through tradition. Sociological knowledge, on the other hand, challenges these traditions and stereotypes. While the traditional social role of women is explained through explanation like biological factors, ritual sense sociology efforts as a different view that such roles may have other bases like patriarchy. Further, sociology is not bound by a single perspective. Common sense is based upon assumptions while sociology is based upon evidence. Sociological knowledge is based upon through research and the resulting outcomes may be contrary to common sense. Empirical testing has no place in common sense knowledge, while sociological research may have empirical orientation. Common sense knowledge is often individualistic and naturalistic. Sociological knowledge is objective, common sense is intuitive. Common sense knowledge on the same subject may not be coherent also. For example, birds of a feature flock together and opposites attract are commonly accepted saying which convey opposite meanings. Sociological knowledge results in generalization and even theory building. Common sense knowledge, on the other hand, may be very personal and two persons may draw different conclusions from the same event based on their own common sense. Sociological knowledge is change oriented while common sense promotes status quoism. Common sense is unreflective since it does not question its own origin, while sociological knowledge is subjected to unending debates and discourse. Sociology has a body of concepts, methods, and data, no matter how loosely coordinated, but common sense is more or less based on personal judgments. Sociology gives deeper insights into our very own routine lives and sometimes comes up with explanations which are ignored during a common sensual discourse. For example, poverty, from a common sensual point of view, is viewed as a result of indolent behavior, while a sociologist may view it in terms of structural inequalities and disabilities. Thus, like every stargazer is not an astronomer, every common sensual observation about society is not a sociological observation, so it is a way of looking at things which distinguishes sociology from common sense. While there are differences galore, there are a few similarities and complementaries also between the two. Firstly, concepts in sociology are framed by taking into consideration the common sensical knowledge. Common sense also helps sociologists in hypothesis building. Secondly, common sense provides raw material for sociological investigations. Sociology tends to answer questions generated from common sense knowledge. For example, common sense views on gender are widely studied in sociology. Common sense also helps sociology by challenging its conclusions and thereby enriching the discipline. According to Anthony Giddens, sometimes sociological knowledge also itself became a part of common sense knowledge. For example, For example, sociological research into martial breakdown has led people to believe that marriage is a risky proposition. Till about the 17th century, common sense and science were not seen in mutually exclusive terms. This belief was strengthened by likes of Murray and Reid, who argued that common sense and science are together used to expand man's understanding of truth. According to Hegel, all philosophy gradually develops from the ordinary day to day consciousness and daily lived experiences, and hence every ordinary person is also a social theorist. But as scientific method gained momentum in social sciences, method was seen as imperative in any social investigation. Durkheim outrightly rejected the role of common sense in sociological analysis, and he termed it as deceptive, unrealistic, untestified, and speculative. According to him, common sense perceptions are prejudices which can mar the scientific study of social world. Markets, on the other hand, consider common sense knowledge as ideological with a limited understanding of the world and shaped by the ruling class. Sociology, common sense. Sociology enriches vocabulary of common sense. Sociology corrects the stereotypes of common sense. Common sense challenges conclusions of sociology. Common sense provides raw ideas for sociology. Sociology and common sense share an umbilical cord type linkage with each other. Both have differences with each other, but at the same time reinforce each other also. While some sociologists try to maintain distance with the common sense knowledge and prefer systematic ways like the scientific method, some others, like the phenomenologists like Peter Berger, Thomas Luckman, and Alfred Sketch, outrightly rejected the scientific method in sociology. Postmodernists also claim that sociological knowledge is no superior to common sense, as there is no such things as complete gospel, and sociological principles are equally uncertain as common sense. According to Goffman, this is a knowledge that people use to make judgments and navigate their way around the world. According to some ethnomethodologists and phenomenologists, though the words used by the people in everyday speech are not subject to rigorous definition, and there are no set criteria for establishing what other people mean or are talking about. People manage well enough with this seemingly unsystematic body of knowledge called common sense. Hence, sociology follows a false path when it tries to apply the sciences and should instead content itself with a more everyday credentials of common sense knowledge. Gramsci identified common sense though with the masses and theoretical thought with the elite. The sociologist's perceptions towards common sense changed over time as the discipline evolved. Earlier, when sociological thought was closer to philosophy, common sense was seen as complementary. When discipline moved closer to positivism, common sense was almost discarded. Anti-positivism, on the other hand, again tried to give importance to common sense, so relationship between the two is dynamic and even mutually reinforcing at times. While there are differences galore, there are a few similarities and complementaries also between the two. Firstly, concepts in sociology are framed by taking into consideration the sensical knowledge. Common sense also helps sociologists in hypothesis building. Secondly, common sense provides raw material for sociological investigations. Sociology tends to answer questions generated from Common sense knowledge. For example, common sense views on gender are widely studied in sociology. Common sense also helps sociology by challenging its conclusions and thereby enriching the discipline. According to Anthony Giddens, sometimes sociological knowledge also itself becomes a part of common sense knowledge. For example, sociological research into martial breakdown has led people to believe that marriage is a risky proposition. Till about the 17th century, common sense and science were not seen in mutually exclusive terms. This belief was strengthened by the likes of Moore and Reid, who argued that common sense and science are together used to expand man's understanding of truth. According to Hegel, all philosophy gradually develops from the ordinary day to day consciousness and daily lives experiences, and hence every ordinary person is also a social theorist. But a scientific method gained momentum in social sciences. Method was seen as imperative in any social investigation. Durkheim outrightly rejected the role of common sense in sociological analysis, and he termed it as deceptive, unrealistic, untestified, and speculative. According to him, common sense perceptions are prejudices which can more the scientific study of the social world. Marxists, on the other hand, consider common sense knowledge as ideological with limited understanding of the world and shaped by the ruling class. While some sociologists try to maintain distance with the common sense knowledge and prefer systematic ways like the scientific method, some others, like the phenomenologists like Peter Berger, Thomas Luckmann, and Alfred Sketch, outrightly rejected the scientific method in sociology. Postmodernists also claim that sociological knowledge is no superior to common sense, as there is no such things as complete gospel, and sociological principles are equally uncertain as common sense. According to Goffman, this is the knowledge that people use to make judgments and navigate their way around the world. According to some ethnomethodologists and phenomenologists, though the words used by the people in everyday speech are not subject to rigorous definition, and there are no set criteria for establishing what other people mean or are talking about. People manage well enough with this seemingly unsystematic body of knowledge called common sense. Hence, sociology follows a false path when it tries to ape the sciences and should instead content itself with the more everyday credentials of common sense knowledge. Gramsci identified with the common sense though with the masses and theoretical thoughts with the elite. The sociologist's perception towards common sense changed over time as the discipline evolved. Earlier, when sociological thought was closer to philosophy, common sense was seen as complementary. When discipline moved closer to positivism, common sense was almost discarded. Anti positivism, on the other hand, again tried to give importance to common sense. So, the relationship between the two is dynamic and even mutually reinforcing at times. According to this chapter, indicative questions with answers. Sociology is an offshoot of the wave of modernity in Europe. Comment. Post medievalism, Europe was characterized by a new state of society called modernity. It was a state of rational transformation of society with a human control becoming stronger and stronger over the environment. It affected all spheres of social life, both private and public, and generated both hope and despair. On one hand, it resulted into shrinking sphere of irrationality, greater control over the environment, and quantitative description of the world. On the other hand, material developments related to it had fallouts like increased crime rate, higher suicide rates, exploitation and alienation of labor in new industries, and so on. This new state of things started the Supporters of modernity as they pondered over how something progressive can bring disorder and chaos in the society, and it must be investigated for undoing the wrong that took place in the process of modernization. This churning led to exploration of a new system of knowledge which could provide a rational explanation of the events resulting out of modernity. As a result, social thinkers like Auguste Comte and Herbert Spencer made formative academic efforts, and sociology was given the status of separate discipline in the year 1895 in French University of Bordeaux. But it would be wrong to say that modernism was the only impetus for the rise of the discipline. The discipline in, in fragmented form existed since ages, and its principles can be rooted as far as in works of Plato and Kautilya. Modernity provided the intellectual nudge that was required for institutionalization of a body of knowledge in the form of a formal discipline. Events like the French Revolution further precipitated its evolution as a formal discipline which was set in the overall context of modernity. Question number two. Sociology is a study of a social system. Psychology is a study of mental system. But should we conclude that there is no common ground between the two? Psychology is often defined as a science of human behavior and sociology as the science of society. Psychology has as its core phenomenological or information processing theories of mind involves introspection, that is the direct observation or rumination of one's own heart, mind and or soul and its processes, as opposite to extrospection, the observation of things external to oneself, which is the subject matter of sociology. Over the years, sociology has played down its claim of being a science, but psychology continues to maintain its closeness with science. It still uses methods of hypothesis testing via repeatable experiments, but despite that, unlike sociology, psychology is not so well equipped to deal with the collectivity of humans and largely remains focused on individuals. In the formative stages, the then nascent discipline of sociology was often compared and contrasted with the existing discipline of psychology. The psychology criticizes sociology as nothing more than social psychology, which is a substream under psychology. This reaction made the founding fathers of sociology, such as Emile Durkheim, to showcase that the two disciplines are mutually exclusive. Similarly, other pioneering sociologists like Talcott Parsons explicitly described the subject matter of sociology as study of social systems, and he clearly underplayed the mental systems through his structural functional approach. But we should not conclude that the two disciplines operate in silos. Durkheim, who had a superior notion about sociology, himself extrapolated sociological findings related to social facts like suicide with psychological dispositions to create new paradigms. Similarly, according to Ginsburg, many sociological generalizations can be more firmly established by relating them to general psychological laws. According to Geertz and Mills, the study of social psychology is an interplay between individual character and social structure, as human behavior is not purely driven by instincts. Thus, common meeting grounds like social psychology serves as a bridge between psychology and sociology. So, while the two disciplines have differences, they converge also. Sociology and common sense have a love hate relationship. Evaluate this statement. Sociology had a threat with the common sense since its beginning as a discipline. Sociological knowledge was seen as nothing more than common essential knowledge by many early proponents of the emerging discipline. This misjudged characterization was merely an outcome of the same source of both kinds of knowledge, that is, society. There are various points of convergence between sociology and common sense. That is, there exists consistency in sociological findings in common sense. Example: common sense suggests that religion or an institution of common belief keep the society together. This was affirmed by Emil Durkheim's study of religion, whereby he identified religion as a manifestation of social solidarity, keeping society closer knit. However, considering sociology and common sense the same would be naive moral judgment, as both of them diverge more often than they converge. Common sense is superficial knowledge, but sociological knowledge is often experimentally verified through common sense is verified through scientific methods. Subject matter of common sense is assumptions based on traditions that have been continuing since a long time, whereas sociology is fact and evidence driven. Common sensical knowledge can be mutually contradictory, whereas sociological knowledge is rather a coherent body of ideas and knowledge. Common sensical knowledge is unreflective, that is, it does not question its own origin, while sociological knowledge is subjected to unending debates and discourse. There is no denying that common sense and sociology diverge more often than they converge. But there is also no denying of the fact that common sense supplements sociology. Common sense provides new hypotheses that are to be affirmed or rejected by sociologists through empirical observations. Further, common sense challenges many sociological ideas, and when these changes are put to sociological investigation, such challenges enrich the discipline. Therefore, the relationship between common sense and sociology is nothing short of a love hate rangeovers. Here are some practice questions. One of the question: what is sociology? How is it different from other social sciences? Another question: sociology is of recent origins, but the study of society is not a sociology is of recent origins, but the study of society is not. Elaborate this statement. Modernity poses difficult questions to which sociology provided answers. Elaborate. Another question: the foundation which was laid by Comte was shaken soon by Weber and Marx. Elaborate this system in light of the limitation of the concept of sociology as a true science. Another question: scope of sociology is dynamic and ever evolving. Justify your answer with the help of illustrations. Another question: it is correct to say that sociology is the study of social systems and psychology is the study of mental system. Comment whether the two disciplines are mutually exclusive. Another question: sociology without history is rootless and history without sociology is fruitless. Analysis this statement. Economists have a narrow view of division of labor, but sociologists look beyond production, examine the statement in light of Durkheim's contribution to the concept of division of labor. Political science is a Another question: political science is the study of power relations, but sociology looks beyond that. Illustrate with the help of a few examples. Another question: while sociology is the study of modern societies, anthropology is the study of primitive societies. Analyze the validity of the statement in contemporary India. Another question: sociology and common sense converge as at some points, but diverge more often. Evaluate this statement. Another question: Renaissance provided the touchstone on which many of the modern social sciences, including sociology, grew. Comment. Another question: what role did Enlightenment ideology play in the emergence of sociology? Another question: what role did industrialization play in transformation, family, and occupation in Western Europe? Another question: though ideas were present already, the French Revolution provided an immediate context for the emergence of sociology as a discipline. Comment. Thank you.